All right, so I'm going to talk about how to do auditioning of material in the Rings library management application. So, basically when you first bring up the application, you'll see your library that you've chosen here, just organized kind of as it is on your file system. But over time you can categorize your material, build up a set of categories that kind of organize things the way you want. I've done quite a lot of that here. You can do that with filter configurations of various kinds, like things that start with kick drum, start with kick, or start with BD for bass drum. Those end up in here. And, if I select a category, and switch to category mode, I'll see just the things that are in there, and they're kind of organized the way that they are on the file system. But it's oftentimes convenient to just like flatten folders. So you can slide this all the way to the left, and it'll flatten everything. It kind of controls how flat the directory is. And so now you can just see like I've got all of my bass drums. Now the thing about auditioning is, I'm going to use an example here where we have a mixer that is connected separately. So you would go to the settings and make sure that that's configured properly. I've put all of my playback channels, you can see them down here, 1 through 8, onto 2 at a time onto each of these 4 channels. You can select any device here. You can actually mix and match devices too. So if you have 2 mixers, you can do all 8 channels or whatever. You can configure it however you want. And the default audio device is just what plays if it's not assigned to any playback channel. So as you're browsing through your library or whatever. So I like to use that as like a cue channel kind of, Anyway, I also have a MIDI controller, which is convenient for navigating through similar samples. So you can do that as well. Just, make sure that you select the right device. A lot of devices will have 2, like 1 in and 1 out. So, make sure you've done it correctly. When you change audio outputs, you need to apply device settings, but MIDI controller changes take effect immediately. So once that's all configured properly, and you kind of see a reminder down here of like, okay, this is what's connected to what. If I select one of these and then just play it, you'll see it'll automatically pick a loop that is a reasonable length for that sample, which in the case of a bass drum is often a quarter note. And now it's playing on this first channel. And if I were to turn this off, you can't hear it, but I still could if I do this cue thing, because the cue is on, which is very convenient, because if you're like, trying to experiment with things, and it's nice to be able to hear them, only in your headphones or whatever, right? But anyway, this is not really a tutorial about the mixer. It's more about the application. So once I like something here, I can immediately just drag to export this. Like if I like this kick, I can just go add it to my DAW or whatever, but I can also, assign it to one of these channels. And then now it's playing here. And of course, I can add some other layers. If I get a clap, maybe I grab this like snare drum, change it to be looped like this, and then maybe I assign that to whatever, say 4. So then that's over here. Okay, and then so that's neat, because you can kind of prepare material in whatever way you want. You can get a sense of what things will sound like before you actually use them in your audio workstation. But also, you can generate more material too. So let's go over some other tools for exploration, and then I'll talk about how you can generate new stuff. So let's say I'm going to add another layer here, and I want it to be kind of similar to this thing I've already selected, which I forget what, this MD snare. In the Explore tab, I'll see things that are similar to that. And I can press button on the MIDI controller to select the first item there, or I can select any, entry on the MIDI controller, and it'll select that item. And if I bring this level back up, you'll see that I'm so I can use these keys on the MIDI controller to select what I want. So maybe I like this conga, and then I'll just hold the MIDI key down, and then it'll bring me to the next column. And I can kind of start looking through these for whatever I might like. Okay, I like this closed hat, so I'm going to whoops, where is it? Yeah, this one. So I'll hold that down, and then it'll bring me to the next column. Maybe let's try this closed hat. Yeah, that's pretty nice, right? And so then maybe I want it to be like that. So anyway, this is like, just a way of kind of exploring the material you have in your library, getting comfortable with what you might want to use. Again, if I'm done with any of these channels, I can just, use Option click to remove it. And then now that will be gone, all right? And what's cool about this too is, let's say I get going with something that I like. I don't know, maybe we'll add this. Oh, that was a nice one, right? Whatever. So we'll say we'll put that here. And so, I'm doing some kind of pattern that I think is cool. I can then go to the Combine tab, and this is especially useful if I'm looking at the project settings. You can see everything that's currently playing. It shows them in order of where they're assigned here, so you can see the kick, and I have this closed hat, and then the tom, and it also shows the currently selected thing always at the top. If I take one of these patterns that I've generated before, you can see here's one that's 125. That's pretty good, yeah. So let's loop it like that. And we'll assign it to 5. All right, so now, I've got this cool drum pattern, but maybe I want to generate some more variations of it. Well, first, let me kind of illustrate how this works. When I generate these patterns, they're just pulling material from my library that's in that category. So, I can select, from any of these, and it'll, generate with these generation settings. And I can even see, like, where the material is coming from. This is, like, the layers that were used to assemble those pieces, and each one of these is a note that appears somewhere in that loop, and then, they're organized here by the category that they came from. But I can also generate more. So while I'm, sitting here messing around, I can let the system come up with some other ideas for me. And it's very nice because, given that the generation is using material from your library, you can really, gain a lot of control over exactly what comes out. It's only going to include material that you've checked in this list here too. So if you want to, generate a pattern that just uses, a few samples that you already know that you're into using in the particular production you're working on, you can make sure that only those are selected, and it'll just use those at generation time, So that's like another very neat thing about it. I'll show some examples of some leads that I generated here as well. Let's loop that a little tighter. And you can see that lead synth is actually made up of all of these notes, and here are the samples that were used. So you really have like a great deal of control over this generation process, All right, so let's go back. I think we have a new variation of this one, so let's try this out. Interesting. All right, so I'll assign that over to 7 here. And nice. All right, and then we've got something else we can potentially audition over here. What does this sound like? So anyway, that's pretty much how it works. And what's great is that as this is going, you can really get a clear sense of the material you have in your library. You can get ideas for how to assemble that material into other patterns, and you can even generate material that is similar to existing samples. We didn't cover that, but here, when you select one of these categories, you can actually type in, natural language descriptions or other reference materials you can select from your library and generate new examples of that specific sample. So at all of these different levels, the tool allows you to both, create, preview, audition, and prepare for use in your productions, all the material in your library.